오늘은 두 번째 쉐도잉인데 오늘부터 좀 다시 새로운 마음으로 좀 쉐도잉을 해보려고 합니다. 일단 시작은 소셜 딜레마로 몇 초죠? Is there a problem? And what is the problem? 여기서부터 이제 1시간 31분 14초 남은 여기서부터 한번 해보겠습니다. 오늘 해보면 30분 동안 영어로 말하기. 먼저 들으면서 일단 가볼게요. 근데 북마크를 어떻게 하지? 뭔가 북마크 하는 게 있을 것 같은데. 못하잖아. 북마크하지. Yeah, it is hard to sing a sentence successfully. I try to touch on. It's hard to give it a single succinct. I'm trying to touch on many different problems. Yeah, it's hard to give a single succinct. I'm trying to touch on many different problems. Yeah, it's hard to give a single succinct. Yes. Single succinct is single succinct. Yeah, it's hard to give in a single succinct. I'm trying to touch on many different problems. Yeah, it's hard to give in a single succinct. I'm trying to touch on many different problems. But what is the problem? Despite facing mountains of criticisms and the so-called big tech vendors getting bigger and entire tech industry under a new level of scrutiny. Yeah. Scrutiny. Despite facing the mounting criticisms, the so-called big tech names, are getting bigger. The entire tech industry is under a new level of the scrutiny. Despite facing the amount of criticisms, the so-called big tech names is getting bigger. The entire tech industry is under a new level of scrutiny. So-called big tech Despite facing mounting criticisms, the so-called big tech names are getting bigger. The entire tech industry is under a new level of the scrutiny. New level of scrutiny. And the new study sheds light on the link between the mental health and social media use. Despite facing the mounting criticisms, the so-called big tech names are getting bigger. The entire tech industry is under a new level of the scrutiny. So the entire tech industry is under a new level of scrutiny, and a new study shed light on the link between the mental health and social media use. Here to talk about the latest results, and a new study shed light on the between the mental health and the social media use, and a new study shed light on the link between mental health and social media use. And a new study shed light on the link between mental health and social media use. And a new study shed light on the link between mental health and social media use. Here to talk about the latest research. Here to talk about the latest here to talk about the latest research is going that there's here's what the latest research is going to that gets no coverage at all. Here's what the latest is going to that not gets no coverage at all. Tens of millions are hopeless addicted to their electronic devices. It's is exacerbated by the fact that you can literally isolate yourself now. Is exacerbate by the fact is exacerbated by the fact that you can literally isolate yourself now in a bubble. In a bubble, thanks to our technology, fake news has become more advanced and threatening the societies around the world. We weren't expecting any of this when we created Twitters over 12 years ago. We're spreading society around the world. We weren't expecting any of this when we created Twitters over 20 years ago. We weren't expecting any of this when we created Twitters over 12 years ago. We weren't expected any of this when we created Twitters over the 12 years. We never expected any of this when we created Twitters over 12 years ago. For instance, we weren't expecting any of this when we created Twitter over 12 years ago. White House officials White House officials say that White House officials say that they have no reason to believe. White House officials say they have no reason to believe that the Russian side of attacks will stop. YouTube is first to concentrate on cleansing the site. Russian cyber attacks will stop. YouTube is being the first to concentrate on concentrate. YouTube is being forced to concentrate on cleansing the site. YouTube is being forced to concentrate on cleansing the site. TikTok, if you talk to any tweens out there, TikTok, if you talk to any tweet out of there, there's no chance they will deleting these things. There's no chance they're deleting these things. Hey Ayla, can you get the table? Can you get the table ready, please? Can you get the? Hey Ayla, can you get the table ready, please? There's a question about the weather. There's a question about whether social media is making your child depressed. Ayla, can you set the table, please? These cosmetic products are so popular that since plastic surgeons have coined a syndrome for it. Snapchat is Snap dysmorphia. Snapchat dysmorphia was the young patients who want certain surgery so they can look like porn they do in filter selfies. These cosmetic procedures. These cosmetic procedures are becoming so popular with teens. These cosmetic procedures are becoming so popular with teens. Plastic surgeons have coined a new syndrome for it. Plastic surgeons have coined a new syndrome for it. Snapchat dysmorphia, with the young patients wanting the surgery so they can look more like Snapchat dysmorphia, with the young patients wanting surgery so they can look more like what they do in the selfies. Still don't see why you let her have that things. Still don't see why you let her have that things. Still don't see why you have. Still don't see why you let her have that thing. Still don't see why you let her. Still don't see why you let her have the thing. What am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? I mean, every other kids in her class happen. She's only 11. Cause no forcing. You can stay disconnected as long as you want. Cause there's no forcing you to get one. You can stay. Cause no one's forcing you to get one. You can stay disconnected as long as you want. You can stay disconnected as long as you want. Hey, I'm connected without a cell phone, okay? I'm on the internet right now. Also, that isn't actually a connections. It's just a little shit. It's just a little shit. Also, that isn't actual connections. It's just a load of shit. Surveillance capitalism has come to shape our politics and cultures in a way many people don't perceive. Surveillance capitalism has come to shape. Surveillance capitalism has come to shape our politics and cultures in a way many people don't perceive. Our politics culture in a way many people don't perceive. ISIS inspire followers online, and now our white supremacists are doing the same. Supremacists. And now white supremacists are doing the same. Now white supremacists are doing the same. Recently in India, in the lynch mob have killed a dozen of people, including killed a dozen of people, including this. It's not just fake news. It's just a news for it's not fake news. Internet in India, in the lynch mob have killed a dozen of people, including their five. It's not the fake news. It's fake news was the consistent consequence. Is the fake is fake news was the consequence. It's not just the fake news. The lynch mob have killed a dozen people. The dozen people, including this, is not just fake news. It's fake news with consequences. What do you handle in pandemic in the age of the fake news? What do you handle in What do you handle a pandemic? What do you handle a pandemic? What do you What do you handle in pandemic in the age of the fake news? What do you handle in a pandemic in the age of the fake news? Can you get the coronavirus by eating Chinese food? We have gone from the information age into the disinformation age. We have gone by time. We have gone from the information age into disinformation age. Our democracy is under assault. What I said was, what our democracy is under assault. What I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are decorated today are starting to the what? Erode, erodes the social fabric of how society works. How society works. What I said was, I think the tools that we have created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works. What I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode and load the social society of how society works. What I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are society to erode the social fabric of how society works. What I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode the society fabric of how society works. 여기까지 1분 28초 47, 1시간 28분 47초 남았어요. Yes, perhaps in a single succinct. I'm trying to touch on many different problems. What is the problem? Despite facing more criticisms that the big tech names are getting bigger, the entire technology industry is under a new level of scrutiny, and as news stories shed light on the link between the mental health and social media use. Here's to talk about the latest research. It's going to get with the no coverage at all, since the millions of Americans are hopeless addicted to their electronic devices is activated by the fact that we can literally isolate yourself now in a bubble thanks to our technology. The fake news is becoming more dense and threatening societies around the world. We were expecting any of this when we created Twitter over 12 years ago. White House official says that have no reasons to believe that the Russian cyber attacks will stop. YouTube has been forced to concentrate on closing the site. Cleansing the site. TikTok, if you talk to any tweens out there, there's no chance they deleted these scenes. Hey Ayla, can you get the table ready please? There's a question about whether social media is making your childhood deficient. Ayla, can you set the table please? Can you set the table please? This cosmetics These cosmetic procedures are becoming so popular with teens. Plastic surgeons have coined the new syndromes for it. Snapchat's dysmorphia was the young patients wanting the surgery so they can look more like they're doing a physiotherapy. Still don't see why you let her have that things. What was I supposed to do? I mean, every other kid had in her class at once. Every other kid in her class has one. She's only 11. Cause no one's forcing you to get one. You can stay disconnected as long as you want. Hey, I'm connected. Hey, I'm connected without the cell phone, okay? I'm on the internet right now. Also, that this is actual, and also that is even actual connections is just a little shed of surveillance capitalism has Severe capitalism has come to shape our politics and cultures in a way many people don't perceive. As inspired follows online, and now white supremacists and now white supremacists are doing the same. Recently in India, internet mobs have killed a dozen people, including these five. It's not fake news, it's fake news with consequences. What do you handle and handling in the age of the fake news? Can you get the coronavirus by eating the Chinese food? We have gone from the information age into the disinformation age. Our democracy is under assault. What I was said was, I think the tools that have been created today are talking to erode the. I think the tools that we have been created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works. Wow. 여기까지 소셜 미디어를 했고, 그 다음에 컬처 맵 이거를 조금 읽어보려고 합니다. 이건 좀 쉬워요. So when I walked into Sabine Dulac's second floor office at La Défense, the business district just outside of Paris, she was passing excitedly in front of her window, which overlooked a small footbridge and a concrete sculpture depicting a giant human thumb. A highly energetic finance director of a leading global energy company, Dulac had been offered a 2-year assignment in Chicago, and after a year of petitioning her superiors for such an opportunity, now she'd spent previous evening poring over a shelf of articles I'd sent her describing the difference between the French and American business culture. I think this move to Chicago is going to be perfect for me, Duluth declared. I love working with Americans. Ils sont tellement pratiqués et efficient. I've loved that focus on the practicality and efficiency. Trop Americans are so much more explicit and transparent than we're in France. I spent several hours with Duluc helping her prepare for the move, including the exploring how she might have how she might best adapt her leadership style to be effective in the context of the American culture. This would be her first experience living outside France, and she would be the only non-American on her team. Twins circumstance that only increased her enthusiasm for the move. Thrilled with this new opportunity, Duluc departed for the Windy City. The two of us didn't speak for 4 months. Then I called both her new American boss and later Duluc herself for our pre-scheduled follow-up conversations. Jake Weber responded with a heavy sigh. When I asked how Duluc was performing, she is doing sort of medium. Her team really likes her, and she's incredibly energetic. I have to admit that her energy has ignited her departments. That's been positive. She has definitely integrated much more quickly than I expected. Really, that has been excellent. I could sense that Weber's evaluations was about to take a turn for the worse. However, there are several critical things that I need Sabian to change about the way she's working. Weber continued, and I just don't see her making an effort to doing so. Her spreadsheets are sloppy and she makes circulation errors and she comes to meeting unprepared. I have spoken to her a handful of times about these things and she's not getting the message. She just continues with her same work patterns. I spoke to her last Thursday about this again, and but there's still no visible efforts on her part. We had her performance review this morning. Weber sat with another side, and I detailed these issues again. We'll wait and see. But if she doesn't get in gear with these things, I don't think this job is going to work out. Feeling concerned, I called Zulok. Things are doing great, Dulac proclaimed. My team is terrific. I've really been able to connect with them. And I have great relationship with my boss. Je Panos, she added, a French phrase that translates loosely as I'm blossoming, or I'm thriving. She went on, for the first time in my career, I've found the job that is perfect, that is just perfect for me, that takes advantage of all of my talents and skills. Oh, and I have to tell you, I had my first performance review this morning, and I just delighted. It was the best performance review I have had since starting with this company. I often thinking I'm trying to extend my stint beyond these 2 years. Things are going so well. As we did with the story of the silent bow, let's consider a moment whether the miscommunications between the Weber and the Locke is more likely the result of the personality misfits or cultural differences. In this case, national stereotypes may be more confusing and helpful. After all, the common assumption about the French is that they are masters of implicit and indirect communications, speaking and listening with the subtlety and sensitivity, while Americans are thought of as prone to explicit and direct communication. The the better, blunter, the better. Yet, in this story of Dav Duloc, an American supervisor complains that his French subordinates lacks the sophistications to grasp his meaning. While the French manager sums happily, obviously, to the meeting her boss is trying to convey. Faced with the seemingly counterintuitive situation, you might assume that the Weber and Dulac simply have incompatible personalities, regardless of their cultural backgrounds. So you might assume, but suppose you happen to be speaking with 20 or 30 French managers living in the United States, and you heard similar stories from a dozen of them. As they explained, one by one, how the American bosses gave them negative feedback in a way they found confusing, ambiguous, or downright misleading. you might come to the correct conclusion that there is something cultural driving this pattern of misunderstanding. And in fact, such a pattern does exist, which strongly suggests that the case of the deaf dialogue is much more than a matter of the personality conflict. 네, 10분 동안 일단 이거를 읽었고, 이렇게 20분 정도 쉐도잉을 하고 10분 정도 컬처 맵을 읽을 예정입니다. 이렇게 하면서 이제 하루에 한 번씩 시도를 해보겠습니다.